Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to open the Borough of Crafton regular meeting, Monday, August 27, 2018. Call to order. Flag salute with Ms. Glasser.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Kazarowski, could we proceed with the roll call?
Mr. Amendola. Here. Mr. Kraus.
Here.
Ms. Perry.
Here.
Ms. Glosser.
Here.
Ms. Stamets.
Here.
Mr. Rosario.
Here.
Mr. Leviser.
Here.
Mayor Bloom. Here. Solicitor Corbel. Here. Engineer Misterman.
Here. Thank you. We can move forward with approval of the bills list dated August 27, 2018.
Second.
Any discussion concerning the bills list? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? Approval of the bills list. Moving forward with the approval of the minutes dated August 13, 2018. Second. Hearing any discussion regarding the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? Approval of the minutes. Thank you. Moving forward to citizen comments. Going to the agenda. Is there anywhere here on the agenda where we have the tattoo parlor ordinance? No. Mr. Arbuckle, the discussion regarding the tattoo parlor will have to be for the end of the meeting for the additional citizen comments. Thank you. Dennis? Any? 14 Ingram Avenue trash? Hey, say. Sorry. Trash was- Nothing on here about trash. And conditions of. Okay, cobblestones for, we went, yeah, we just, you wanna talk about the bricks and the cobblestones?
No.
Okay, all right, then,
No, I'm the trash.
oh, it's just trash, okay.
Trash plus.
That's me, so.
Okay, yeah, I just wanna make sure, okay. Well, that will have to wait till the end meeting. Richard Kramer, you can come forward and talk about the new items about the brick and such.
Kramer, 26 South Grandview. Just want to make mention that you've been doing a good job with the asphalting and re-asphalting of the roads. But it seems like every year the brick roads, the cobblestone roads, are not being looked at. And other than South Grandview, the road has become quite wavy now. And there are parts of it where the bricks are missing, and also parts of it where we had, I guess, sores dug up at one point, and their cement things going across the middle, they're starting to fall apart now too. Want to know if there's any plan for the brick cobblestone roads in the future, or just if there was any plans for this time for the brick roads.
Thank you. All right, moving forward with the rest of the agenda, seeing no additional citizen comments on the agenda items. We have the acknowledgement of the receipt of written reports, July of 2018, Treasurer's Report, Financial Report, Act 511, and Trash Collection Reports, the Property Tax Collection Report, the Police Report, the EMS Report, the Ordinance Officer's Report, the Building Inspection Report, Public Works Report, Fire Department Report, and the Library Report. Moving forward, mayor's report.
Yeah, real quick, I just have a request for council, since we had some complaints about oversized trucks parking on the streets, and there was a gentleman from Crafton Boulevard that came up and spoke to that. I'd like for council to take a look at the truck ordinance. And what I'm specifically asking them to do, in the original ordinance, it was way back in the ordinance number 1430, which was signed in, I get it, spilled chocolate milk. That were signed in August of '85 by James Boyd, President Council, Patricia Kazlowski was the secretary, and Mr. Welch was the mayor at the time. There was a restriction on trucks that were parked on the street. In order to obtain the truck ordinance, the truck permit, the annual truck permit, the height of the truck couldn't exceed 7.5 feet, width of 8 feet, length of 19 feet, 3/4 ton, in a single rear wheel. Subsequent to that, in different ordinances, it was changed, and this particular portion got deleted. What I'm asking is to check, the height thing is probably the big thing right now, with some of the trucks that are technically within the parameters of the ordinance. The gentleman on Crafton from 2000 Crafton Boulevard spoke to this huge truck that was parked on the street. You know, and it was, I would say 11 feet, 10, 11 feet tall. And I think that in order for safety and, you know, the fire department getting around, these larger vehicles don't need to be, you know, on the streets. Now, if you could look into, through the solicitor, to rework these specific ordinances, and maybe come up with something a little more up to date with what's on the road, you know, as far as fleet vehicles, that some people have more than one. In the specific ordinance, the last one that I read said it was limited to 1 permit per house, but I've seen several trucks from a business parked on the street, and I'd like to get the ordinance updated to something that's more viable for 2018, 2019. And this is cranky as it here, I have an answer. Oh, there you are. I do have an answer. The combined regs 12, 1 to 15, Crafton Boulevard, 15 miles an hour, year round. I'll show it to you whenever. We don't have to have a discussion, but I'll show it to you. Got it right here. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Moving forward to the engineer's report.
Okay, I'll just highlight a couple items that we have that might be slightly different from what the report is that we issued on August 23rd. First is the O&M defect repair contract through Shaycog. That was a manhole-to-manhole lining contract that, because there was only one bid received, they decided to reject the bids. And Crafton gave its concurrence letter to reject the bids for Shaycog. I don't think they're going to rebid that project this year. They'll do it, I believe they're doing another contract next year. If that changes, I'll let you know. On the 2018 road program, it's mostly complete. I know they're finishing up the North Linwood ramps. And then we're waiting on Crafton Boulevard and Hawthorne Avenue to have the gas company's work completed. And so they're going to coordinate that work. And then at some point we'll do a final walkthrough with the Public Works Supervisor to create a punch list of items that may need addressed. The Crafton Park Rain Garden, I mentioned in the report that we had a meeting with an Alcoasand representative on the 16th discussing their input and providing the post monitoring and equipment and data for the post monitoring of that project, so that the project could be closed out with a final Grow Grant report, which will happen next year. And also talk to them about a further assessment of a complete separation of all that flow from not only the public street as far as Clearview is concerned, but also the state road, and looking to take that drainage as well, combine all the drainage in the area and take it out of the Crafton system and discharge it into a stream, which is 2,000 feet away. But still, it's Alcosan's most preferred method of source reduction from combined systems, and therefore they may be interested in funding part of that project. We'll assess that as time goes on. Ewing Road, we're looking to work with the Dirt and Gravel Roads and Low Volume Road Program to get a grant to improve some drainage on that road, looking to not only enhance or reopen the road, but to enhance the road once it is open. We know that the drainage, the uncontrolled drainage, is going to be the biggest detriment to that road. So maybe if we can get some money from this local program to provide some drainage control, we can keep the integrity of that road up to a standard that we can leave it open. Next is the Borough Avenue demolition. A pre-construction meeting was scheduled for the 23rd, and the work is expected to start as soon as this week. So that is proceeding. Clearview Avenue, we just received today from the contractor, Polino, all the agreements and the bonding documents, and that now we're trying to schedule a pre-construction meeting for as early as this week to kick that project off and get it going. It is a compressed schedule to get it in time for the paving season before it ends. Some general engineering notes, Sycamore and Fountain demos. As I've been reporting since June 1st, we've been trying to get the contractor who demolished those homes on those two streets to come back and re-topsoil and seed to restore the areas of the restoration or of the demolition to no avail. The solicitor had sent a letter dated August 22nd and has gotten some action from that contractor, at least and a commitment to start work. I believe he's going to talk about that in his report. So that's all I have as it relates to updates to our report.
With regards to resident communication for Phase 5, we should have that well underway here in the next week to 2 weeks, correct?
As far as notifying the residents
The
before
future,
construction
yes.
begins. Yes, that's part of the pre-construction meeting, is they'll make a submittal to what that notification looks like. We will, and you will have a chance to look at that notice and make sure it says all the things that we want to say.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Moving forward to the solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have, if you can pass that down. Phil's passing this way. I think Abby already passed around this way. This is the draft fire inspection ordinance we discussed at the last meeting. I just wanted to run through a couple highlights and am available if you have any questions today or later. What this ordinance does is it creates a requirement that all businesses and multifamily residences shall register with the borough on a registration form supplied by the manager. All such properties must report changes in occupancy to the borough within 10 days. Fees can be charged to defer the administrative, clerical, and inspection costs. Typically, I would suggest that you do that through your fee resolution. There is some highlighted language. This is in section 90-33 about waiver. So in the sample ordinance that I previously provided with the memorandum, Collier Township included this language which would allow certain entities, nonprofits, educational, religious organizations to waive the fee It's really within your discretion to do that, so I leave that up to council and feedback from there. Registrations will happen biannually or biennial. In nature, they'll be for 2 years. The way I have the ordinance drafted, which can be changed, is that business properties will come online, be required to register in January of 19, and that permit will be good for 2 years until December of 21, and then multifamily will come online in January of 2020 for registration, and that will go through December of 22. You can obviously flip those if you'd rather do multi-residential first, or you can do them both at the same time. You should consider staffing requirements, etc. So I just need a little feedback on how you want to kick off the program. And that's really it. The inspections will look at fire code issues, construction code, property maintenance, zoning, and other health and safety code requirements. If folks fail to register, there's a penalty provision. You can be fined up to $500, and if you don't pay, you could spend up to 30 days in jail. So that for you to chew on, and I'm happy to take questions if anybody has them now, or we could talk about it at a future meeting. Seeing none. I just to piggyback on the engineer's report about 78 Fountain. I did send a letter, and the next day received a phone call from the contractor indicating that they have been busy in McKeesport, and the earliest they could make it to the borough would be the beginning of September. I obtained a commitment that the work will be performed by September 15th, and that they will coordinate their on-site work with the borough engineer. So we can go out, know when they're coming in, and go out and check once the work is done. And that's the end of mine. Yes?
Just wanted to add that one of the items that we'll be responsible for is to water the grass, to make sure that it grows. They'll plant, they'll seed it, they'll topsoil it, seed it, probably throw some straw or something on it, and then they'll be relieved of their obligations once that's done. So it will be in our court to get that watered and, get it growing, to get it established. Nature may take care of that, toward the middle of September, it's hard to say. But, you try to get that grass established so that if it does rain hard, it doesn't wash off.
All right.
Maybe the neighbors.
Maybe. All right, just so we can move forward, we had an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss personnel and property. No decisions or actions were taken. Just want to make sure.
That's correct. And we did receive advice and solicitors as well.
Okay. All right. Moving forward to our business agenda this evening. Under administration, we have a motion to appoint Rachel J. Susko as Borough Crafton Borough Secretary, effective immediately. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
This is just a housekeeping issue for council that when we appointed her manager, we did not appoint a secretary or the next motion, which is our open records officer.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? Motion carries. A motion to appoint Rachel J. Susko, the Borough of Crafton's Open Records Officer, effective immediately, and to direct Ms. Susko to report her appointment to the Pennsylvania Office of Open Records.
So moved.
Second.
Do I hear any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? Motion carries. Moving forward, under building inspection, discussion concerning the draft fire inspection ordinance. Do we hear any discussion this evening about the ordinance that we just received this evening? No? All right, moving forward. We're gonna move past the discussion concerning the fire marshal and the discussion, request for proposal for building inspections. Moving on to library. A letter received from the library board regarding labeling parking spaces for library parking. Does anybody have any comments, discussion, concerns?
So I read the letter where they're requesting their parking spaces, and I think that they are under the misunderstanding that the borough has any sway over that parking lot. And I think that maybe we need to communicate with them that that property is actually owned by the fire department and is to the port authority. So there's really not anything we can do with that. And I know that a year and a half ago, when I was still on the library board and was looking for some other solutions for them to not much avail. The issue has come with Blair actually starting to use the property that is his property, that library and other people used to just park on across from the library. So that's what we antecedent the request is. But I think that the new board and the people in the library are not aware that this is already, kind of gone through. And I think they're under this, this misunderstanding of who has control.
Points well made. With that being said, as we all know, parking downtown, immediately adjacent to the municipal building and to the fire station is limited. The other point of the memo discusses possibly relabeling some of our municipal spots. However, I would disagree with relabeling those spots because our employees and our residents who are downtown doing borough business should have access, and they are, from what I understand from Mr. Kozrowski, used quite frequently, if not all day long, so we don't really want to take away from the public that's trying to do business down at the building.
Yeah, there's very few of those spots anyway.
So are we then in turn simply just, for lack of a better word, kicking this can down the road a bit? Because, from what I'm hearing from Coletta, so to summarize, we're gonna send a letter over to the library saying, we don't own the parking lot that you want us to use, so, and this other guy owns the lot we used to park in, and we can't park there anymore, so we're back at square one. When does this dam break, is my question.
Well, the great thing is, we live in the Borough of Crafton, which is one of the #1 walkable districts on the west side of the river, and we have parking available up Bradford and other parts of town. And if you want to go to the municipal building when the parking lot's full, you have to do what everybody else does, which is stretch those legs and make your way down there if you're able. And the library is a separate organization, nonprofit. They can wheel and deal and make other deals with other organizations that might have availability. But other than that, the borough has limited control at this point. Actually no control, other than giving up our municipal spaces, which our employees and our police and our customers, citizens use. They're
No,
very
it's an
limited.
intractable situation right
Yeah.
now, but there was a lot of work done on it a year and a half ago. Basically, at that point, we pointed out that, the borough owns that small parking lot next to Serafino, so employees could park there depending on what time they came in. And, it's just like you said, it's an intractable situation like that.
Does anybody else on this side of the table have any comments?
I think it's just, Crafton is just a hard place to park anywhere. And as Coletta said, we went through it, made some suggestions of over there at Serafino's, over across from the AM/PM market. I think we did everything we could back then, and we just don't have the spaces. And I agree, I don't think that we need to take them out of the municipal.
All right. Larry, are you okay? All right.
All right, I have a couple of comments to make.
Yes.
About a year and a half ago, when that property changed hands over there, Ann was trying to get some spaces for the library, at Mr. Cress's, Blair's place up there. And I happened to be standing in the office when he came in one day, and he wanted to talk about a tap-in fee for the sewage or something like that. And, Ann asked him if we could waive that tap-in fee, would he consider some parking spots for the library? And, he was not against that. He had said that the parking lot wasn't done, and that they could talk about it. So I think that maybe you have a communication with him, don't you? Maybe you could ask him about that and see if in fact he did have that sewer, or whatever it was, that tap, is that what it is, a sewer tap in? If that was waived, and if he's gonna make good on his promise to give us some spaces for the library.
Yeah, from what I understand, there was no legal documents, there was no discussion with council, so that sidebar or that manager's decision really doesn't hold any legal weight because there wasn't any agreement.
Other than in the spirit of being a good guy?
Which I agree. We can ask him, but I don't know what our legal recourse is other than to ask that owner to compensate us.
Give us some consideration.
Well, consideration, or number one, ask for the consideration to fall through on the spirit of the agreement that he had made verbally with the manager. And two, if he doesn't comply, I don't know what kind of recourse we have with recouping the tap fee. And those are questions for the solicitor.
So the tap is in and been done.
And the fee has been waived?
Yeah, I'll have to research on those. I'm pretty sure that
So,
figure number was provided.
let me just ask a clarifying question, if I may. So, the gentleman who owns the lot that is directly across the street from the library asked to waive a municipal fee in exchange for some parking spaces which never materialized. Is that my understanding?
That's what we learned.
But did he ask for that consideration, or was that
I
offered?
wasn't a party. It's all hearsay to me as counsel.
I was there.
Were you the one that made the suggestion?
No, I didn't make the suggestion. The manager was doing her job, and,
Made the suggestion?
they had pretty much of a, don't put words in my mouth.
Okay, I'm asking.
They pretty much had an agreement that he would give some consideration to the parking spots if the sewer tap-in fee were waived.
Do you want to make any comments at this time, or do you need to think about and research this?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Fred.
So
Yeah,
we're gonna think about asking him about it? approaching him
we have
about
to.
it, or what are you thinking?
Well, I think we have to understand now I understand the facts of what occurred, whether or not the borough has any claim to those property, or to the parking spots, even though, because we did give him consideration. So what legal basis do we have to still stake claim to those? So I'd rather look at it, and then we could reach out. I'd rather reach out with information than not.
Okay.
Well, how much would that have cost to have that done?
To take a look at the legal issues.
No, to.
The tap fee?
Tap fee.
I don't know what the tap fee was.
It's probably close to 1,500, plus the street restoration. He would have to put a deposit down for street restoration, plus the tapping fee itself. I think it's approximately around anywhere from 1,100 to 1,500.
And the previous manager, you could make the argument, was doing that person a favor, because wasn't there a timeline or cutoff for taps?
Well, it would have been June of this
Consent
year.
order?
Would have been June of this year, so.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Right, I'm
So,
saying,
I'm not sure
to
if
get
that
it
was
in
a-
behind, before the deadline, there was definitely a benefit to do it last year.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you for bringing that to council's attention. And Steve,
I will look into it and let you know.
all right. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Reached out, one of our council members was curious about when our next visit from the council library board would be. I reached out to them September 10th, 2018. They'll be here for the Q3 update, and Q4 they were invited for December 10th. Moving on to Public Works, I have a couple items here. The discussion of the financing quotes received from the financial institutions for the lease purchase agreement for the Public Works Crafton truck and plow. We received three quotes from the different financial institutions. Our depositor, basic deposit that we use, PNC Bank, provided the most competitive quote at 3.99% for a 5-year note, and the recommendation would be that we work with PNC and entertain a motion this evening to go forward with PNC. So Rob, or Public Works, can take delivery of their new vehicle. I didn't hear any discussion to add in. Do you have any questions about what was on the council share regarding those quotes?
That was curious, is it CDL or?
Not CDL.
So when the truck was in the budget?
Yes, yeah, it was, the payments were budgeted, so that's what's been worked in budget and forecasted.
Okay,
And so if somebody would like to make a motion
to finance the truck through PNC at the 3.99%.
For 5 years.
Thank you, for 5 years.
Seconded,
All right.
or so moved.
All right, may I have a second?
I guess
Hearing,
we need to do it if you
right. So hearing any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All that oppose? All right, there you go. Going back to Public Works Director full-time with a new truck. My truck. All right, so with that, hopefully in December, at the end of September here, we'll have a tailgate with council and the mayor and
On the new truck?
with the new truck.
All right.
And the decals on the parking lot. We'll have a little event outside prior to the meeting, and sort of give the new manager a welcome, and I think it'll be a nice event at the last meeting for September. So would I hear some discussion or suggestions if we could go forth at like maybe 6 o'clock prior to the meeting and invite the community out for a little event?
Sounds good to me, I'm always up for a party.
All right, we'll work out the details of that and discuss further at the end of the, at the next
One
meeting.
more question.
Yep.
Is it asphalt season over?
No,
Or we do any alleys with it when it gets here?
I'd love to get 2 alleys that I have targeted that I'd love to try and get done. I'd have to work with Carnegie. I mean, we've been doing, working with us with their paver. Our paver with the screed has to be repaired. And the model we're trying, it's hard to get the parts. I think what's gonna happen, if I get, work with Carnegie Borough with their paver. We did it last year, actually did a joint project. With our 5-ton truck, Ingles 5-ton dump truck, and Carnegie's 5-ton dump truck, and obviously there's at least the 2 hours that I got targeted. Hopefully, we'll work that out with Carnegie.
All right. I know Abby has a lot to say about the use of historic bricks, so,
I have a lot to say, apparently.
yeah, why don't you start the conversation?
About historic bricks.
Yes.
Well, they're nice.
All right, sorry for putting you on the spot. So there's been a lot of discussion around the street trees and what we're gonna do with the sidewalks that are lifting and with the road program, and specifically what we saw in North Linwood as we're going through. We have to come up with a solution to help with the fact that Shade Tree Commission really does want to adhere to the spirit of the Congress of Neighboring Communities resolution from this 9th Congress on trying to preserve as much of the canopy that we have, tree canopy that we have in this Tree City, USA. And it seems as if using salvage brick in those areas might be a solution. It allows for water to infiltrate to the roots, provides for flexibility, it prevents us from using material that can't be recycled easily, being the concrete. So there's definitely techniques to save slabs. A lot of them are broken, so it may be something that we consider how to use the brick pavers and keep some of the character in the communities, parts of the community that lost their brick streets. You've seen areas where residents have personally salvaged materials as roads have been redone. They look nice, so it's just something to discuss and work with the Shade Tree Commission and the Planning Commission on. So I just wanted to bring it to council.
There's something to that, like reducing the old brick though. I know that some people wanted to have their roads to be bricked. That's what they used to be, but obviously we don't have the capability to do that because it would be too much money doing it. We don't have bricks necessarily. But
Aren't the bricks underneath the roads? Sorry.
well, there's some there, but it'd be, wonder if it'd be possible to maybe have the intersections bricked, or maybe the crosswalks bricked. So
Yeah.
that way, there at least it brings a little bit of.
Yeah, and former councilman and vice president Dave O'Brien was curious about that as well last year. So it's just food for thought, and the reason why it's important to move forward with these discussions as fall is, like the last phase of Clearview, there's a bunch of red brick that we can recover from what I understand from Mr. Kazarowski. We have stockpiled. We've been doing a pretty good job of trying to retain that. So when we do go back in and try to take care of what I would call our heritage streets areas where council is going to designate as they should where we should maintain the brick, we need to have that. The expense of the brick, if you go out to the market and try to purchase it, I've seen prices from anywhere from 50 cents to $1 per paper. So we have the space currently at the municipal yard to save them and figure out creative ways to reuse them in our own community. So just wanted to get the pulse of council, and because the next thing on the agenda is to have a motion. It's pretty lengthy, so I'm gonna.
Before you do that, can I
Yep.
ask a question? Do we have any idea off the top of anyone's head how many streets are brick versus?
I have that. I do have that. I think it's about the Crafton Borough, I believe, it's 32 miles of streets, and I believe, I'm not public works form, but I think it's either 3 to 4 miles of brick streets
Okay,
out of 32.
okay. So the majority of the brick has been lost to asphalt.
Yeah, I'd say that, I'd say brick trees have been overlaid through different periods of time. I do have a pretty good stockpile of different colored bricks already in the line. My recommendation to council is going to be this budget season too, is based on the road fund for brick restoration work. A portion of the road fund when we start addressing some of these brick streets. A portion of that will go to it. I believe that we'll start at least addressing maybe a 5-year plan for a street like Belvedere.
Well, that segues into I wanted to ask as a question for you and for you, because I know in one of our meetings, we talked about during the stormwater discussions about that there had been a 2013 capital improvement plan or something akin to it, where Gateway had presented it to a previous council, and I'm interested in knowing in that plan what the plan would be for keeping the streets. Because when I talk to residents, just not on Belvedere, but anywhere like on my side of town where there's still quite a few brick streets left, the overwhelming majority of people are adamant about keeping the brick. I mean, we came here for the brick, we want the trees, we want the brick and the Victorians. Without those things, people are like, this bums us out to lose it. So I'm interested to know what a feasible plan would look like to between Public Works and Engineering to restore all our brick. If there's any, this is just a naive guy asking naive questions, but is there any possible way to ever go back to brick where we've lost this, in certain circumstances? Those types of questions. What I'm interested in. And I'm not putting you in the spot. I can see your whole body change like.
Well, the cost of
Doesn't
brick,
happen.
Cost of brick, all right, you go back in the up, it's almost 3 times as much as you do for asphalt. I think to repair a square yard of brick is, like I said, a few $100 worth, square yard of asphalt, you know, it's maybe $60, $70. So it's almost, it's very costly. You could do it. That's like my recommendation, at least start somewhere with the repair program as far as historical street, Creighton, the one ending Creighton off of Noble. Don't want to have a contractor come in and repair that, because that is a historical landmark. It's one of your major streets in the borough. The one section of that we repaired in the 2019 budget. That hurt the road fund. Take it right out of there. But I mean, you have to come up with a list of priorities. Council has to come up with a list of streets they want to see done, and there will be cost estimates. And you might not do a full brick street in a year, but maybe a 5-year plan.
So,
Section by section by section, and get it completed.
Yeah, just a question for me to understand. So we'll use my street, Belvedere, for example, the beginning of the street is fairly, Alice, what's your?
It's a washboard.
Okay, so Alice's side of the street's in, okay, right? My side of the street has got a hole in it
It's just,
that puddles for a
it
three-year-old
looks like
lake
it's
prone.
falling down.
And then the end of Belvedere, where it terminates to nothing, where the park would be, there was a section that was done from the back up where they had re-bricked it. And I had a neighbor indicate to me that she would be willing to take 2 hours of her time in a re-bricking plan to come out and volunteer her hours to sand the street and brick it. That's how much she wanted to keep the bricks. So how would you see like a street like that, you know, which is fairly long, you know, what would phase 1 of that look like, so to speak?
Probably phase 1 would start with the water company actually was done and redid the brick. I would start on that end, and based on what we have in the budget. So we put $100,000 a year for brick restoration. That $100,000 might take you 100 feet. So you put that, start where the road's already completed, just work your way out from the dead end section all the way to the top to West Crafton. That's what I would recommend to do. Once you do, you know, to get our budget in place.
So,
Well, I meant like, not so much as a technical aspect, but more about an esoteric, just like, you know, would that take how many years, would you say? Just without.
yeah,
being spot.
I don't think that's fair at this point to, you know, dive into this. I think what we need to do is sit down with our engineer and have a workshop on that with council, planning commission, and the public to really learn about this and what the big picture is, because the reason why some of the failures are occurring in the brick streets is sub-base and also utility issues. And so you really need to look at the big picture and figure out what the most cost-effective way of addressing those issues. And the good thing is People's Natural Gas is actually doing a lot of work in the municipality, so we need to get ahead of this. And so that's why this fall would be a good time, because their capital improvement plan is immense in western Pennsylvania, and they've been spending quite a few dollars in our municipality as well. Same thing with American Water. So as soon as we understand the cost-benefit analysis of that and understand what the best path forward in designating which streets really should retain the brick, and then possibly, you know, moving away from asphalt and looking at pervious pavers and other things that aesthetically have appeal, but also have other engineering functions. And again, it's a function of sub-base, and Engineer Midstream could talk to that, could teach a class at Pitt on that.
Yeah, just a brief comment. When we do 5-year programs, usually the brick streets are pulled out and just ignored because they just cost so much money. And so most municipalities can't fathom dealing with it. Usually their asphalt program is in such dire need that it's 5 to 1, not even just 3 to 1 dollars, you know, for brick restoration versus repaving. At least it's a very labor, and it's a skilled labor skill set. So it's like masons and you know, foundry guys. There aren't a lot of them anymore. So it's very expensive, and it's very costly materials. So what I have seen though that has been somewhat successful is some public works groups might have someone who is handy to be able to do this type of work. So in the summertime, maybe they'll bring some summer folks in for labor to help. mixed concrete, pull bricks, clean bricks, and then have that guy sort of dedicate a lot of his summer or part of his summer to just patching. So you can find in most of these streets, a lot of these streets hold up pretty well. And you might find 10 or 15 or maybe 20% of the street that actually needs pulled out and just rebuilt and feathered back in. So, the appeal to these streets is that they are bumpy, they do slow traffic naturally, so there are some appeal to keep them as close to the condition that they are, even though some would say it's a rough ride, but some would say it's a great ride. So that's something I've seen where maybe in-house, because labor is your biggest enemy, and materials are, if you have some brick and you have someone that might be able to lead a small crew to dedicate so many hours during the summer to work on this, and you can just start hitting the worst areas in each of these streets. It might be 10 by 10, 5 by 5, 15 by 20, just small patches. And then going back to the utilities, I mean, you have a street opening permit, you have requirements. If we can go back to the municipality or to the utilities that have done improper restoration work, and under most of these streets is a brick road. That's normally, is a concrete pad that the bricks sit on. So that has to be restored as well. So that's another reason why it's so expensive. But the point of even getting the utilities to ante up to fix their mistakes isn't out of the question either. So either getting funds for that or having them come in and make those restorations. And the last thing is, any work done in those streets, we should strictly adhere to the street opening program. I would recommend that you hire the engineer to come and watch that work, and that the utility companies then reimburse you for those costs. So in those areas, when you're trying to be particularly sensitive, don't let them come in and do the work unmanaged, uninspected, and then that's what you get, is sometimes bad work. So just some suggestions. But I think it's a great idea to sit down, prioritize, talk specifics. Maybe you have somebody, maybe you don't, that could lead a small crew and start picking away at it.
Thank you, Rick, appreciate it. All right. So with that being said, I'm gonna move forward. Is everybody all right? All right, move forward. Motion that the Borough of Crafton shall conserve and recover, where practicable, the brick pavers from the Borough of Crafton roadways and alleys. Said brick pavers shall be stockpiled by contractors in the Borough of Crafton Public Works Department and the Borough of Crafton Public at the Borough of Crafton Public Works Department yard. I know I really went overboard here. Moreover, brick pavers shall not be sold or disposed of without the prior consent of the council of the Borough of Crafton. Any funds received in the sale of said brick paver shall be deposited in the Borough of Crafton's road fund. The minimum quantities of broken brick paver shall be permitted to be sent for disposal in the course of working and utility openings. However, it should be the charge of the borough manager and the director of public works to conserve and manage the resource in accordance with the spirit of this motion made by the council of the Borough of Crafton. The Borough of Crafton shall consider further codifying this directive if it is found to be necessary.
So moved.
Second.
Hearing any additional discussion on the topic of bricks?
So,
Yep.
when we talk about recovering, it's like, in what instances would we be recovering brick? I mean, what we've been talking about a lot is the brick that's there staying there. being
For instance,
used. Pardon?
when we take up a street like Walnut, or when we were doing the Clearview project, or when we've done any kind of full depth reconstruction with asphalt as the final work product, that's where we've been recovering the brick.
Okay.
And from time to time, other municipalities and contractors have learned that the Borough of Crafton has a stockpile, and we're open to negotiating with them on that, and we just want to make sure that the contractors don't abscond with the product in the course of doing work, that they don't haul it off as waste. We'd like to keep it. I would rather keep the brick than take their millings, because the brick's more valuable, and in the end, somebody's going to want the brick for something, like in another community when somebody else wants some decent brick. I was speaking with the mayor over the weekend, And there are, there's varying grades of brick that are out there because of wear and tear in certain parts of the community. So some brick fare better than others. So with that comes the value. But if you're going to be restoring a part of the street that's fairly well worn, you don't necessarily want pulled up brick. You want something that's sort of comparable. So again, that entire process is labor intensive, but we do have available acreage down at the Public Works yard to store that in the municipality free of charge to the taxpayer. So we might as well hold on to it a while until we figure out what the game plan is.
Just so I'm clear on this, when you indicate that any broken bricks, so basically, it's at the discretion of like Rob and whomever, if like stuff's processed.
Yeah, broken, cracked, I mean.
You're not gonna keep all of those little shards that are.
What happens, though, the contractor comes, has a triaxle and he rubs up on the street with a review. He comes and he counts them, they're not clean for him. And obviously, when we use them or whatever, we'll go through them, hand pick them. And some of the half bricks we use when you're restoring the street, so maybe smaller sections. So we'll use it.
To your point, to Abby's point earlier, half bricks where they might have been something we didn't need before could be repurposed if we're gonna do a crosswalk on Bradford now. I mean, we can make something out of those.
Yeah, it just comes down to economics and time management. And the Public Works Department has done a really nice job of trying to conserve them. This is really, I don't want to say for the engineer and the contractors that we go out to bid with, they're not to assume that the brick is there for retaining. It's the borough's, it's ours, we want to retain it. And if we as council and the community want to wheel and deal with Brentwood or Edgewood or whoever heck is interested in it, that's for us to decide.
We can write into the bid specs that the brick is the property of Crafton Borough, and that, we would have the discretion to keep it or have them dispose of it. So we need to write that into the specs. In the past, we've been able to get the contractors to give the brick to the borough and take it to Public Works and dump it. So I think they've seen it as a convenience so far, so they've been amenable to it.
I just know that the discussion in Western Pennsylvania is sort of changing. People are looking for it now.
When
So
it
I want
becomes,
to get ahead
when
of
it
it.
becomes a value, we'll need to write it into the bid specs. Just like scrap when they're demoing a building, they want to keep the steel because they can scrap it, so then that comes off your bid price, right? But if you tell them you can't take the steel, then the demolition price is higher. So in this case, there's at least, to my knowledge, not this year, a value in the used brick, but that could change. So we should start writing that into the bid documents, and we'll make that item of discussion in the pre-con meeting for Clearview as well.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear any other discussion?
Going back to what the engineers talking about, the Clearview project, that put that into, that we talked about it in the meeting, do we need to talk about maybe having the engineer make sure they're for the street opening, so they don't actually mess up the brick on purpose, because you don't want the brick anyway, and then have us go away, and then all of a sudden they start taking the brick up nicer for themselves.
When they demo the street, they're just gonna come in with bulldozers and track and whatever equipment they use, just take it up, load and dump it.
Oh.
That's probably good the exclamation mark.
Yeah.
Do I hear any other additional comments? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving forward, a motion requiring the borough engineer and public works to use 811 coordinate PA's online application to coordinate future infrastructure projects to utility contractors in addition to historical practices of communication. So moved. Second. Do I hear any discussion?
Do we need to have this as a motion? Is that not already in practice?
It's not a current practice.
Okay, thank you.
It's a very new system. It just was developed this year, end of last
It
year.
was launched at the Ninth Congress of the Congress of Neighboring Communities, actually.
Yeah, and so it's relatively new, and in a lot of communities don't even know about it yet. But it's ironic that Chaycog started this idea maybe 5 or 10 years ago, and we're having quarterly meetings with utilities and municipalities, which Crafton was represented, to discuss these items and to make sure there was some level of coordination. And then one call decided to take over the program and try to make it more throughout the state. And they've come up with software that emulates what was being used, and it's very good. So, no, I think it's a great idea just to make sure all your professionals know that you want that utilized, just like reuse of burning. You know, it's something, I think it's good to declare so there's no doubts to say, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. Yeah. So I think it's good.
So there's a GIS tool that the 811s put out there, and we're just trying to make everybody use it, so people won't go, oh, we didn't know you were doing this street. So that's the point of that. Did I hear any additional conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. A motion to instruct the borough manager and the director of public works to develop and implement a best practices communication guide for resident notification of future and ongoing projects, best practices for utilizing borough GIS resources and utility resources to ensure all property owners receive ample notification via email, mail, telephone, when work will be occurring on or immediately adjacent to the properties. Furthermore, community notification of work shall be published on the Borough of Crafton's website, posted in the office, and published through the community notification and calendar system.
Second.
I hear any conversation, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to planning and zoning. Discussion concerning vacant property ordinance. Did we hear any discussion this evening on that? We had about 4 weeks now. So does anybody want to delve in this evening on that topic?
I believe we left it in limbo. We were debating the fee structure, vis-a-vis how much we would charge folks for having vacant property in the borough. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, there are 2 issues that I wanted feedback on, in addition to just the overall ordinance itself. I asked for feedback. There is a waiver of fee provision in section 167-4. Fees can be waived if all local municipal fees are paid in full, good faith effort is shown to rent, sell, or lease the space, pricing is consistent with other similar buildings, the building's in compliance with all codes, the building is habitable, so that you can at that point come to council and ask for a waiver if you meet all of those criteria, which is, those criteria exhibit good faith on the part of the property owner to maintain and try to sell, lease, etc. the building. And then secondly, it's the fee structure. There's 2 ways to do it. The draft ordinance has, and I put this at the end in case we need to take it out, is a codified fee structure, or alternatively, as I recommended with the fire inspection ordinance, is to have a fee structure that's set forth in your annual fee ordinance, fee resolution, I mean. And then the last thing about the fee structure is that I am concerned about the increasing fee structure that rises to $5,000 per year at year 10 of a property being vacant. I understand the theory behind it being the more that you have to pay for the permit or the registration fee, maybe that will incent you to try harder to sell the property, release the property, etc. But my feeling is that we are constrained by law, and we can't charge a fee where we gain a windfall. And so there would have to be some argument comprised to establish that a $5,000 fee is a reasonable fee for the borough's time and efforts to basically register and inspect the property. Now you can talk about carrying costs, etc., but the law doesn't look at that from sort of an opportunity cost perspective. They look at it from a dollars and cents perspective. So, I think the fees step up from $150 in the first year 300, 500 in year 2, then 1,000 in years 3 and 4. You could probably get away with a fee that's in the $500 to $1,000 range, but I would hesitate to go higher than that.
How much is the demolition on Bar Avenue costing the borough?
That's
10.5.
different. So I understand where you're coming from. It's costing less than 10,000, around 10. So, but that's not what this registration permit is to recover. It's not meant to recover the cost of a demolition. It's meant to recover the costs associated with conducting a vacant property inspection and maintaining a registry.
Do we amend it to be applicable for properties that need to be demolished? Because my thinking is that, 10 years is about the time that some of these houses have been sitting out there completely falling into the hillsides, that we're now spending 12 grand and so on and so forth to knock them down, and no one's, those folks have abdicated their moral high ground, and so to speak, that now we're taking these properties and knocking them down to make something out of them, and we don't have the housing stock to give away in the first place. So my theory, by the way, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, I hear what you're saying, but, it's where do we draw a line and say it's not okay to, abuse the good faith of the borough, so to speak?
Coletta, do you want to say something?
I do, if that's all right.
I mean, Philip has left, but
But
go ahead.
he's turning
Abby
it
has
over
the
to
gavel, so.
Yes. Anyway, I'm seeing these as closely associated, but that they are different things. And we're talking about creating this registry so that we have a way that for long periods of time, if properties are absent, and basically, I was fortunate and was able to close my mother's estate fairly quickly, but we talked about a lot of the vacancies, because estates take sometimes a very long time to sort out. And if the estates are complying and maintaining, they should, the purpose is to keep them from blighting at the 5-year or 10-year mark. And so, I'm not sure, I understand exactly what you're saying, and we have to address that. But in my mind, this ordinance is a way to keep properties that are vacant for good reason, to stay at a minimal level and not to deteriorate. So that's not.
I would certainly concur with that. It's just the outliers, we're knocking down houses, which we shouldn't have.
The issue with the 10-year benchmark is that you're assuming in 10 years that the property can be condemned and demolished. And there's no guarantee that that's the case. Maybe they've been adhering to the ordinance and it's secure and whatnot, and it's not in terrible shape. So that's where I think your argument, although I understand where you're coming from, I think that's where it kind of falls apart. So currently, if we are tearing down a home, as we've talked about before, the borough typically either obtains grant funding to do so or pays for it, and then as the property is subsequently leaned in the amount, the cost to the borough to tear down the property. And there's a hope that at some point in the future you can recover the cost when that property is sold or transferred. But that's not always a guarantee. So when you all are making decisions to spend money to tear down homes, you have to tear it down, hoping you get the money, but there not being a guarantee that you will be repaid. And so that's more of a policy and not a legal decision on this council's part.
Right, it's really the decision to demo or go through the Allegheny County Side Yard Program is really a broader community economic argument about blight and effect, and that's what we had the interns work on this past summer here. So I would recommend that council have the solicitor revise the escalating fee schedule so we could move forward on that. And then we have something in the books and see how that works for us. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Can we cap the fees? Where's the highest that you feel comfortable with? Just,
I think if you want to try this and see how it goes, then, have $100, $150 for the first year, $300 for year 2, and then third year beyond it's $500 and see what happens. Now, I would still suggest that we take that out of the ordinance and add it to the fee resolution, just because with respect to the fee resolution, you can make a change on the fly without having an ordinance and advertising costs, etc. So if everybody's comfortable, I'll pull the fee out of the proposed ordinance, the fee section, and we'll just simply say that it'll be set by resolution by council from time to time.
Okay.
And then there was, there was a point earlier.
It was just the waiver issue. If you wanted to, if you wanted the opportunity to waive the assessment of these fees against properties that meet certain conditions, if they are, all their fees are paid in full, there's a good faith effort to rent, the pricing is consistent with other buildings, the building is in compliance with all borough codes and ordinances, the buildings have it, that you would be able to, upon application from a property owner, to waive the fee for a particular year.
So that seems like a good incentive.
Isn't that basically what our neighboring communities are doing?
That's what Collier, this is from Collier, and that's what they're.
would there be a, how would we know aside from, what's our recourse to make sure that those, the fees I can see, whether or not it's being rented, we can see that from the street, so to speak, I guess. But how would we know it's the other things are being met? There's nothing in there as a mechanism to enforce,
We would ask the applicant to submit, and then we would make a determination if it's sufficient.
Okay.
So as far as the code inspection, though, we have to put the report on it?
No, we could say that if you apply for this, then you're granting us the ability to come into the structure and take a look.
Okay.
Yep.
So with that,
Okay.
table discussion.
Yes.
Wait for your revisions.
I will finalize it, and you guys let me know when you want me to advertise it, and I'll do so.
All right.
Okay. All right. Moving forward to the discussion concerning Allegheny County side yard program, I'd like to lead the charge on this discussion. So we have difficult decisions to make with regards to property demolitions. Obviously, highest priority, health and human safety are paramount, and that's why we make decisions often to do demolitions. And followed by economic reasons, how it impairs the value of the overall area in that part of the community. And as we've seen with other parts of Allegheny County, often the municipalities are endeavoring on the demolition cost to, in hopes, help the community economically, and there's a sunk cost in doing the demolition. With regards to properties that we've had through the program so far, we have properties that have been demoed and that will go through the side yard program, and then we have properties that have not been demoed, and the residents will take on the responsibility because obviously there's some type of economic argument as to why they would want to endeavor on taking the property on. So with council understanding that there's pros and cons to the side yard program, I'd like there to just be more of a thorough review by a body. We have a planning commission, and one of the things that we're required to do in the resolution as we allow the residents apply for the Allegheny County side yard program is to ensure that it's in accordance with the comprehensive plan. So I'd like to have these applications go through the planning commission, make sure that all possible scenarios are worked out, we understand the value, and really help inform us where we're gonna spend our demolition dollars and see, do we jump the gun and do a demo, or is there somebody that's going to be interested in the property and have an economic incentive to demo it themselves and save the borough that cost. So I just want council to understand there's pros and cons. When you do a demolition and the property owner next door sees a ray of hope and they are able to feel confident that the community is moving in the right direction, they often make improvements to that side yard, they improve their home, and it really, it does lend value. So I think there often, you could say, there's sour grapes in a lot of things, and we've made some of these decisions to take down the homes. But I think on the flip side, you gotta look at the benefit that's providing to the overall community. And hopefully, in the event that a property owner does move on and they sell their property, that side yard is of value to that property, and that property comes back on the books at a higher assessment, which helps the Borough of Crafton and the other taxing entities, including the Carlton School District and Allegheny County. So that's all I wanted to add, and I wanted to hear if there's any other concerns with the proposal of pushing this through the planning commission, make sure we understand the big picture as council.
So in, I know you have focused on side yard being used for properties that will get demolished, but when you look at how the side yard program is set up, it's just as legitimate that there might be a home that is the 3+ years in arrears that is rehabitable, that a next door resident might be interested in doing that. That's also just as much a part of the side yard program. So, the idea that every side yard program application is going to be for a property that either has been demolished, has gotten to that point, or needs to be demolished is not the whole picture. And saying that, it kind of reinforces the idea that in the future, side yard, people who are thinking about going through to apply for the side yard program, talk to the planning commission to help to develop the plan that they have. Because part of the requirement for that side yard program is to do two important things. And that is to have a valid and workable plan that will, that is attainable, and that there is adequate financing for the plan. And it is with that information pushed forward, plus the local municipality telling the county that, yes, we believe that's the case, and that we believe that that is an appropriate use or plan for that property. So it's just a little more focused. It's a broader program than that, and going through the planning commission makes a lot of sense to me.
Thank you. With that, do I hear any additional comments? If I do not, I'd like to move forward with a motion requiring all Allegheny County side yard program applications concerning properties within the Borough of Crafton's jurisdiction to be reviewed by the Borough of Crafton Planning Commission prior to being approved by the Borough of Crafton Council.
Any question?
Yes.
So this motion is specifically for starting next year, since I see we have.
Yeah, August 31st is the close of this cycle.
Okay, so the
It's
motion that
applied.
we have on the table is.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So what happens in a scenario where, for whatever reason, the planning commission would reject their application, but they would still have, of course.
Well, they don't have the privilege of rejecting it. They have we are charging them with evaluating and providing guidance an opinion.
So it's basically just like a non-binding type of thing then?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to make sure I'm clear, because, you know, I hate to see people think and misunderstand that somehow they're not able to apply for something because maybe, whatever.
Yeah, the intent is to put it into the big picture, give council more perspective versus things showing up on the agenda, and then we rush, and because there's deadlines. We don't want there to be a rush in any instance where we're making a decision on a piece of property, and we don't make any other decisions like that. So it's really just a due process, make sure we're doing our due diligence as a community to vet these applications.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other comments? With that being said, hearing no additional comments, may I have, for all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Motion carries, thank you. All right, moving forward, a motion to adopt resolution 2018-10, Allegheny County Side Yard Program, property block in lot 68-P-76 in accordance with the comprehensive plan.
So moved.
Second.
Hearing any discussion? Any questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to community announcements. The school district tax collection, Tuesday, August 28th, 2018, here at the Borough Building, right, Rob? 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Friday, August 31st, 2018, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Rob, you want to move forward and discuss the full schedule?
Sure. Well, I'll make an announcement today. We had a fire failure in Crafton. The police contacted me and asked for portable stop signs. I was out for about an hour. So when the fire goes out at the pole, the whole circulation system gets shut down. Means there's no free chlorine. We're able to put the chemicals into the pole and the pump system was shut down. Manager notified me that she requested permission to close. The fire went out about, I guess, right around 5 o'clock, or came back by 5:30. Take an hour and a half to get it up to where it needed to be for people to use it. The pole closes at 8. There was people that actually came in at that time. Refunds were made because of the unfortunate power failure to those people that they used the pole for maybe an hour. So we gave refunds out, and the pole was shut down for the rest of the evening due to the fire failure. The pole is on a modified schedule now with everybody back at school. Monday through Friday, we go 4 to 7, Saturdays 12 to 7, Sundays 1 to 7. Labor Day will be the last weekend for the pole, and that will be back to almost regular hours, 12 to 7, Sunday through
Sir,
Monday.
could,
Saturday.
please,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm hard of hearing.
Oh, speak up.
Slow down.
You got it, sir. Modified pool schedule, August 20th through August 31st. Monday through Friday will be from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Saturday will be from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. Sunday, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. Labor Day weekend, Saturday, 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. Sunday, Monday will be from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. The 6th annual doggy paddle will be held on Saturday, September 8th, 2018.
Oh my God.
10 a.m. to 12 p.m., $10 per dog for registration. Forms are available at the Borough office and the library. Proceeds benefit the Crafton pool renovation. That better?
All right.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
No, you're fine, sir.
All right, now we're on to additional citizen comments. Mr. Kennard, Arbuckle, 59 Maplewood Avenue. And your topic is concerning an ordinance.
Yes, that too far ordinance. Doesn't work? No. Okay, I'll speak louder. I finally got a copy of the ordinance. I had read the thing. And I've got one question. Do you realize what it means when on page 5 you say, adult-oriented businesses shall not be permitted in any zoning district other than the I industrial district, and strike that out? It's struck. I would appreciate some enlightenment there, because to me, it sounds like what that does is permit adult businesses in the C1, C2 districts, because they're businesses, and I see no reason why they wouldn't be permitted there.
That's not what happened, sir. That was just clarification for that section of the ordinance. Adult-oriented businesses are only permitted in the industrial district in the borough. What we did is separated adult-oriented tattoo parlors to non-adult-oriented tattoo parlors. And so there's no change to the adult-oriented uses in the borough. They are still limited to the industrial district. So that's ordinance is only part of our zoning code, as you know.
I'm very well aware of
And
that.
so that does not, that revision was for the purposes of this change. It did not change the underlying zoning in the industrial district where adult-oriented uses are permitted.
I'm looking at what I've got in front of me here, it sure looks like it did.
I don't know what else to tell you.
Well, you can tell me that when there's a confusion in two pieces of an ordinance, and somebody goes to court and says, I want the application available here, and the ordinance is not perfectly clear, who wins? And I'll tell you, it's not the zoning entity.
There is no confusion in the ordinance, sir. I'm sorry that you believe that.
Well, I'm sorry that I believe it too, because if this goes and I'm right, you're wrong, and it'll be pretty. Because that opens everything up. I don't even understand why it's struck there.
I don't have it in front of me, but that was a specific revision to accomplish what we need to accomplish. It's still, adult-oriented uses are still only permitted in the I district.
Yet you redefine this as non-adult-oriented business in this ordinance.
Just the tattoo.
I understand.
It had no change to the underlying definition of adult-oriented.
Yet everything else down the rest of the page here talks about adult-oriented businesses and licensing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The strikeouts up here is item 1 on this list of items that you renumbered. I don't understand how that works without, how the moving the non-adult tattooing, which is kind of interesting, because if you're not 18, you can't get a tattoo, so I find that already interesting. But this doesn't look good, folks. It's not to me. And I'm sure you looked it over carefully. I'll look another time, but it sure looked like that's what we did. With an internal inconsistency in the ordinance. You got two things that used to agree and now don't. Within the same ordinance. Usually not a good idea, I'm sure well aware.
Once again, I'll say,
I heard
that's
you.
not what happened. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Mr. Arbuckle.
Thank you.
Dennis, would you like to come forward? Name and address.
Yeah, Dennis, 14-year manager. I've been coming to you folks for 5 months now. Okay, about one of those down here about the trash situation. Nothing's been done. Not a single thing. What are we gonna do about the situation? I'm tired of living with rats. I'm tired of living with garbage down there. Okay, what's it take to get you fixed and do something? Yeah, and I'm tired of lip service. I'm tired of lip service from Lobos. Okay? And it's a mess down there. They got trees piled up down there. From the trees falling down, limbs. It's getting to be a garbage dump out there. We need to do something about this, and I want this thing cleaned up. What's the solution? They put it in motion for you guys to sit there in front of the judge and everything else. You guys have the paperwork on it. You even call Dave, he's still working part-time over in Eagle, over there. To sit there and ask him how to proceed, you go back into fine now. But it's not starting this mortgage. I really want to get this thing cleaned up this year, actually, end of this coming month. Okay, I deserve the respect to have this done. I've been sitting here coming up, listening to all your other stuff going on, sitting there applauding the stuff you've done. I just really want this done now. It's time now. You have a comment?
I was gonna say, any violations will be written up and.
I've been waiting for you to do violations a long time ago. I got a neighbor down there, parks a pickup truck in her front yard, which is a violation. There's a trailer down there, is a violation, sitting on a side yard, okay, down there. Okay, and it's all in your code enforcement stuff. Okay, if I can find it, you guys can find it. The violations have been there for 5 months now, and you still haven't done nothing. Okay?
Well, I'll review any open violations, and any additional violations will be processed and they will be taken to the magistrate.
Yeah, well, it should have been done 5 months ago.
Well, we've moved forward as you've seen, so your public comment has made motivation in this council to hire additional help. And we're on that, and we've hired a full-time manager, again, to facilitate that.
So I'm gonna wait another 5 months?
I don't believe you'll have to wait another 5 months, we just have to document and go through the process here.
Well, it should have been documented through every one of these tapes that we have here.
So with that,
And we'll go through it. As long as you're on the council, people talk to me about it. Okay? So this process started, what time deal with one and everybody else. I've been nice about it. Okay, it's time to stop. Okay, I want something done.
I understand.
Okay, not next year, not next 6 months. I want something done next week or so.
Yes. Yeah, anything that's in our legal means, we will pursue.
Okay, but not want to come back to our council and find out. What you've
Again,
done.
I'm not the code enforcement officer, I'm not the magistrate, however, whatever avenues we have to pursue it, we will take every avenue to make sure that things are cleaned up. But again, we have to work through the legal process, and, part of the process is having people to facilitate the process, and this council has made numerous actions and motions over the past 90 days to facilitate the business.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm gonna leave it at
Hey,
that.
maybe you didn't understand what he was saying. We just hired a
I
part-time
understand.
ordinance
Yeah,
officer.
also.
We've been in a jam here for a few months because we lost our manager and there's a new manager coming aboard. So, basically what he's saying, Rob's still our ordinance officer, but there's a new one that's on board that's gonna try to get us caught up. We've been in a jam for the past few months.
Yeah,
And I think what he's trying to explain is that, we're looking forward to helping you down there because you came up here and complained about it,
Over 5 months ago.
Okay, well,
Yeah, right?
give us a minute here, and our new ordinance officer's doing a fantastic job. She's moving around town, seeing things, and I'm sure she's gonna be down there the next day or two, looking things over.
Thank you. It's all right.
I don't do
Wait
it.
more. Don't believe me? All right, it's fine. Okay, thank you.
I know she's there for 5 months.
No.
Done, yeah.
Hello, council. The solicitor would like to take a moment to, this evening, discuss and clarify the ordinance regarding adult-oriented businesses.
Mr. Arbuckle, I just wanted to direct your attention to page 4 of the ordinance that you had. Under section 4, section 225-84, that section inserts in the R or the I district the use of adult-oriented businesses. So it is in fact maintained as a use in the I district. It was simply moved from the section where you saw it was stricken and moved into a different section of the ordinance. Just wanted to clarify that for the record, and so there was no confusion for you or anybody here tonight or watching on video. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing, no, go ahead.
from the crosswalks on Student Street.
Yes.
And the state gonna put them in,
Open.
so we're not gonna have no crosswalks.
It'll be done tomorrow, I coordinate with the police officers, because I can't send my guys out on Route 60 without any police
So
protection.
it'll be our guys.
We talked to Mark, yep, I'll be doing it tomorrow. Starting at Steuben and Noble. I'll be the first one we get, Steuben and Noble, then we'll go down to Steuben and West Grafton.
We're gonna be down at one by, Crown, Farm State Hotel.
Yes, West Grafton. I call it West Grafton. So we'll start up there, then we'll go down there.
Okay. And the circle, we're waiting on.
The circle's a contractor's responsibility to do it because it's paving. Once he gets done with the police paving, he'll be putting the traffic markings back.
And that will go all 4 streets.
Yes.
May I ask a question?
Sure, please come forward.
I didn't put my name up there because I
Yes.
didn't, I'm
We'll
not
make an
listening.
exception this evening.
I sort of have one question, and the mayor
You
could
You get the
probably
exception if you come up and
have to come up there.
counsel.
Shut, thank you.
Karen Falvo, 257 Noble. Do you remember when that portion of Noble, which is the one-way street between Cross and Steuben, was ripped up, closed down for 6 weeks while the brick was being removed? Did we retain the brick from that? Was that that was in October 2012? Did we retain that brick? Because I remember it being dumped into dump trucks and taken what looked like out Route 60 somewhere.
It could have been,
Does anybody know what happened to it? That was 3/10 of a mile of bricks.
That brick on, that Noble Avenue hadn't been touched in 60 years, okay? So that brick was probably worn down because if you notice, I'm just saying that the wear down and the reuse of those bricks doesn't work after a while because they're too thin. Then you have to prop them up to plant a new brick, you know.
I just wondered what happened to them.
What happened to
You know,
them?
they were put on a truck and trucked off somewhere. Is that part of our stockpile?
I wasn't here in 2012.
No. Well, the people weren't. Nobody knows what happened. That was 3/10 of a mile of bricks.
All right. Seeing no additional citizen comments on the agenda or hearing anybody from the up.
Of course, Roy Neiman wants to speak. First of all,
3 minutes.
Mr. Engineer, I didn't know it was brick below brick.
Concrete is what I meant to say, concrete block.
Concrete, okay. Right. Second, the bricks can be sold as adornments, or whatever you want to call them. So rather than tar over them, dig them up. What I heard was there was a clay underlay, and that's why we have the ripple effect. Is that true, Mr. Engineer?
Do you want to address this?
No, I just,
I'm asking.
I'm asking.
so, as I stated earlier in the meeting, we're gonna have a broader conversation about, the nature of the brick and the path forward for the brick. So your comments on the brick are accepted, and we're gonna address them in a meeting with the planning commission and with the shade tree commission to talk about the path moving forward on the recovery of said brick into the state of the streets.
Okay. I apologize. I'm not trying to embarrass you.
Yeah, these guys, I have to follow a certain protocol, you understand?
Of course. As a systems programmer, I've got to keep my mouth shut. Tarring over the brick or the whatever, I think is wrong. And finally, brick cell below grade is going to percolate to the surface. Am I right?
I'm sure that's possible.
Sir, please be honest.
Well,
It's,
Could you direct the questions to me? I'm chairing. the
oh,
meeting.
okay.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. President. My final question.
Yes, sir.
I have a solution for the baseball fields that I've been complaining about.
Okay.
And
And to interrupt you, at the last meeting, I understand that you were very concerned about the baseball field, and I would, again, address any of those suggestions or comments to Mr. Kazarowski, who will be going back full-time to Public Works, and I'm sure during the day he'll be able to work with you and figure out a solution. But if you'd like to continue on to just finish up your last minute here.
please seek him out to me. I have a solution.
That's excellent, thank you.
Seriously, I was frustrated, but I have a solution.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comment.
Okay, listen. You get up and talk.
Moving on, there will be an executive session after the adjournment of this meeting to discuss personnel issues. Thank you for your time this evening. Meeting adjourned.
Huh?